And I've got to put on Facebook and social media. Uh, just a second for that. No, I can do it. Okay, we're ready for you.
Okay, good morning, everyone. This is the time for the broadcast for what we usually call the broadcast. What do we call the broadcast, Pastor? It has to do with your mental health. And we want to welcome not only all of the regular listeners, but I want to welcome Pastor Bruce, who's the co-host today. And he's interested in his mental health as well. Good morning.
Good morning. And yes, I'm the co-host every Wednesday with you, unless you identify somebody to be your special guest. But
Yes.
what other special guests could you have but me?
Well, occasionally, like once a year, I've had a dear friend of mine who's a psychologist, and he likes to be on my broadcast once a year.
Well, he can only come on if you give me, I need at least 30 days or 40 days advance notice so I can find something else to do on Wednesdays at, what time are we on? We're on at 10 o'clock.
10 o'clock,
10
yes.
o'clock. You and I were talking about what special focus we wanted to step in, where we wanted to go with this broadcast. And I had mentioned to you that with the aging process taking place with me and also with you, that a lot of people see things in our lives and they want to help us in certain areas. And sometimes what they think is helping us really isn't helping us, because sometimes they have great intentions, they have good intentions, but sometimes it's creating more anxiety because now we have to make a shift according to what their recommendations are versus how we're actually feeling. Have you had that happen to you?
No, I pretty much know what help I need because I live alone in my condo. And I do everything that I need to have done for myself here. However, my son and his wife, God bless them, when they come, she does all my paperwork, all my banking, and she also washes the floors in the bathrooms, the 2 bathrooms and the kitchen.
Right.
And he vacuums and cleans and waters plants. So they do those things when they come here.
In some instances, when people are coming to the house with good intentions.
I can't hear you.
How's that? Is that any better?
Better, yes.
The people come to your house and they have good intentions to assist you in some very critical areas of your life. For example, I'm having a struggle hearing, and so my wife tricked me into going to get some hearing aids. So I wear hearing aids, but a lot of the people in the studio will be talking to me, and I repeat back what they said, and 3/4 of the times when I repeat back what they said, it's not what they said. And so they'll say to me, put your hair, they always say around here, Renee, Eric, Pastor Hobbs, my wife, my children, put your hearing aids in. Now, how's your hearing?
My hearing is fine. And as a matter of fact, when you are preaching and teaching, I don't see any problem with your hearing.
Well, that's because when when I'm preaching and teaching, I'm really sending information out. I don't really have to listen to people say anything back to me, but it's when I'm in, for example, when I'm in the studio, I'm always wearing a headset, right? So
right.
if I had the hearing aids on under the headset, don't you think that would be too much amplification going into my ears?
I don't know, because you're the one that needs the hearing aids. I don't use hearing aids.
Well, I don't understand why your physical makeup and emotional makeup is a whole lot better than mine, that you don't need hearing aids.
And I'm older than you are.
And you're older than I am. I mean, somebody who is your young age would need it. But that's, something, there's a lot of things. For example, I'm not using a cane, but my wife does, and she's younger than I am. So
Mhm.
we all, the aging process and things are all different for all of us. They're really not the same. And
Exactly.
we have to make an adjustment to how our bodies are functioning, how our eyes are functioning, how our ears are functioning. Sometimes we adapt to what is changing, and then other times people will tell us that things are changing because sometimes we don't pick up on it.
I know. And I remember that your wife, Pastor Karen, had multiple medical problems. She had multiple surgeries,
Yes,
and you had to take her to the hospital and wait and pick her up. And you weren't able to go in and wait with her, but you had to wait for her. And
right,
that was different for you.
right. That was different for me, and uh, it's amazing. I'll tell you one that's kind of funny. So when you're in the hospital, you usually receive 3 meals a day. And in
Mhm.
some hospitals, they'll give you, you can decide when you eat. You call them and say, I'd like to have a meal. Some hospitals do not deliver it in the morning, the afternoon, and the evening. In some hospitals, you call them, they'll come at any time you call. And so when Karen was in the hospital those 3 or 4 times, she was used to 3 meals a day. So when she came home, she would call me and say, well, what are we having for breakfast? I said, I don't know. Then she'd say, what are we having for lunch? I'm saying, I don't know. Because at home, we're not used to
Mm,
preparing meals 3 times a day. And so what everybody in our country began to do is they began to order those meals, especially because
right,
of COVID, and people were having meals delivered to their homes.
right.
And quite frankly, the prices on the meals are much, a $15 meal could now cost you 25 or $30.
I
So,
know it's, well, everything costs more. Everything in the grocery store costs more. Everything in the department store costs more as well.
right. And so we had to make that adjustment. We're working on making that adjustment because
Mm,
I'm not always cooking or I'm not always home. And Karen, it's hard for her sometimes to get into a car and run out to grab something to eat, or even to stand up for long periods of time to cook a meal.
yes,
So we all have to make these adjustments as our bodies are going through
right.
transition and our bodies are going through changes. And God forbid we end up in the hospital. It's one thing to go in to see a doctor and the doctor says, I don't like how this looks or sounds. You need to go to the hospital. It's another thing to pass out. It's another thing to, in my case, to have a heart attack in the house and know that you need help quickly. Because once that happens, everything changes. And our family members are now observing us intensely, wanting to know how we're doing all the time. And
Well,
that creates a dynamic.
you might remember that there was a period of time, 2 or 3 times actually, that I was in the hospital and you came to see me.
Right,
And I remember one time when you were there, you wanted to know if I were about to receive a meal because
right.
you didn't want to interrupt it. And it,
No, that's not true. I wanted to know if you were going to receive a mail. Then I was going to ask you what it was, and then I was going to go out into the lobby and get another spoon so we can eat the meal together. You notice I usually visit patients. I usually visit church members in the hospital around mealtime, the morning, the
Yeah,
afternoon, and the
yeah.
evening.
Well, that was fine with me because I'm not much of an eater, but that was fine with me.
So as it relates to your appetite now, is it the same as it was, let's say, 5 years ago, 10 years ago? How is your appetite changing?
My appetite is very different. Um, I eat small portions of food now.
You eat
And
small portions of food.
and before, when I cooked for between 20 and 30 people on Sundays, and I served that meal. And
Yeah,
now I can't possibly cook that amount of food. I can't even cook for myself.
yeah. Well, you know what? The other thing that Karen and I found, not that we're using it today, but we found the companies that would make the food for you and
Mhm.
send it to your house once a week in a frozen packaging setup. And you put the food in your freezer, and it's all you got to do is put it in the microwave because it's already cooked. You put it in the microwave and you eat it. And
Right.
we tried three different companies, but after eating their meals over and over and over again, you begin to lose your appetite because it's not like creating a meal in your house. Have you ever had the pre-packaged meals?
No, I have received only one meal a day from a company that delivers a meal to me every day.
Is that for free, or does the person have to pay for that?
Well, it does fulfill me in terms of the amount of food, but it's not as tasty as what I would have cooked for myself.
Do you have to pay for that meal, or is it free?
It's free.
So that's because of your senior status, correct?
Yes, and because I have been accepted as one of their patients.
Okay. So that's interesting because I was going to look into that. For example, you now, when you come to church, you're not driving your car up and down the highway. Could you tell us how you come to church?
Well, I've registered myself as a patient in need of transportation with the ride.
Yeah.
And so I've been coming in on Sunday morning with the ride, and then the ride picks me up to take me home at noontime.
Right. So I was going to look into the ride myself. I mean, there's a list of things that as you grow older, as you're thinking about how to take some of the stress off of your life, there's probably a list of things that the senior coordinators at City Hall or in the
Mhm.
State House, that they should be able to give us a list of things that we need to check off to say, because this is happening in my life, I need this. Because of this is happening in my life, because they're dealing with all of these seniors, they know where the free food is. They know where there are gatherings. There are
Mhm.
gatherings of seniors in different places that you can go to during the day.
Mhm.
My mother who lived in Virginia, during the day, she went to a place where other seniors were, and she stayed there for the day, like we have it for children, kindergarten. You have something for older people where you can be stimulated in conversation with other people your age or older,
Mhm.
and that's something that people can do rather than sitting in the house all day doing nothing and not being stimulated. Because I think what's important for our mental health is the stimulation of the mind, right? We
Mhm.
don't want to we don't want to shut that down. So where does your stimulation of your mind, your thinking, where does that come from? And I know part of it is like Wednesday when you're talking to me.
Yes, actually, one of my children applied for this service, this food service to be delivered to me,
Okay,
they called in and said that I was a good candidate for them to consider, and they
okay.
did. Yeah.
Well, I was talking to Renee and Pastor Hobbs about a friend of mine whose his wife is, getting older, and she wants to keep her mind stimulated. So she has, I don't know if it's definitions of words or a word game that she picked up. It's for the mind. And she does this, and he does it all the time because they have to think of the answers. And my wife was saying that maybe that's something that I should take a look at so that I could stimulate my own thinking. But that's not going to work for me. You know why? Because I'm
Yeah.
too tired. Louise, I'm tired in the afternoon. I just want to take a nap.
Oh, yeah.
Have you ever thought about something like that to keep your mind stimulated?
No, actually, I've got things to do because I'm a member of the trustee board in the building.
Okay,
So I've got things to do. I talk to a variety of people about for example, the fact that the crane is here today. I
yeah,
went downstairs twice already and responded to some owners who said, "What's that big gadget out front for?
right, right.
I can't drive my car up to the door." And they know that that the that the crane is so large, it's taking all the space at the door. And if they want to use their car, they're going to have to come to the front door. But that is something that I have time to spend and respond to folks in the building because I don't have to drive anywhere. I'm just talking to people who I meet in the hallway or in the lobby or on the porch somewhere. But
So,
so that's a good thing for me. And sometimes when I have gone to bed at night and I have gone to sleep at midnight
yeah.
and woke up at 3 in the morning, 3
Mhm.
o'clock in the morning, and I don't go back to sleep at all, I find that I do take a nap in the daytime to catch up on the sleep that I missed.
So how long a period of time can you nap?
It's really only no more than an hour.
If I nap for 3 to 4 hours.
Wow.
So, and
Ooh,
sometimes I'll put my alarm clock on to wake me up. So if I take a nap at 3 or a nap at
wow.
4, I put my alarm clock on. It wakes
Oh.
me up. But even though it wakes me up, sometimes the dogs will wake me up and say they
Mm,
want to go outside. And I say, "Don't you see I'm napping?"
yeah.
But after I take them out, I come back in. I want to sleep for the rest of the night. So I
Well,
think it's important if you feel tired that you do that, right? That you go ahead and take a
yeah.
nap
Well, what's different for me, as I'm older than you are,
by a few years.
and I tend to sleep a half an hour. That's really all I do the next day to catch up on the sleep that I lost during the night.
Well,
That's it.
let me ask you a question about physical um, functioning. Do you actually go on walks or up and down the corridor where you live? Do you
Yes,
do that?
yes, I
So,
do. I open my door and I walk out with my walker. I
okay,
go the whole distance of the 7th floor
okay,
corridor. Then I get on the elevator and I go downstairs and I go the whole distance of the 1st floor.
yeah,
That includes the lobby.
right.
And then I go back upstairs. I might do that once or twice a day. That's my exercise because sometimes it's too cold outside to go out. And other times earlier when I started doing this, it was too hot outside.
Right,
Now it's too cold.
right. But you feel the need to do that, that you need to go
Yes,
out and,
yes,
you know, it's
yes.
something kind of funny. So I have on my wrist, I have a watch,
Mm-hmm.
and just before the broadcast started, I made a mistake and I pressed the wrong button, and it was called the alert button.
Ah,
So if I fall anywhere, my phone will detect that I fell, and it will send out an emergency signal to the people that I have identified on my phone. And so it started ringing in emergency, and so I stopped it and I pressed a button that said this was a mistake because I didn't want my family members running to the studio and then bringing me to the hospital. It's important that as you reach a certain age in life, that you have a way of protecting
mhm.
yourself against a fall, against fainting. I use a watch. A watch is my way of sending these emergency signals. Why don't you tell the listeners what you use?
What I used for what?
Any kind of alert if you fell or
Oh,
if you needed.
I have something that I usually wear around my neck, which I don't wear when I do the broadcast because you can see the cord.
Okay,
Uh, but it has it's an alarm, and if I fall, I can just press it and speak to someone and ask them to come and take care of me at my unit right away. And what they'll do is they'll come with a gurney and with people who are available and trained as first aid people,
yeah.
and they will then take me downstairs in the gurney and put me in an ambulance and take me to the hospital. That has
Yeah.
happened to me 2 or 3 times.
Do you have to pay for that, or is that included in your insurance,
No,
or
no,
that's all for free?
that's in my insurance.
Okay, because whenever you and I go to the hospital, there are a certain set of questions that they always want to ask. And the one I find the funniest is when they ask you this question: Do do you feel safe at home? Now, I've been
Mhm,
taken to the hospital and Karen has accompanied me a couple times.
mhm,
And and so the last time she took me to the hospital and they said, "Sir," the first thing they said was, "Sir, you look good for your age." And I said, "Thank you very much." And then they said, "Do you feel safe at home?" And I
mhm.
said, "Do you want me to answer that with my wife in with my wife in the room?" And I said, "No, I'm only kidding. I'm only kidding. I feel very safe at the house." Do they ask you that question?
Yes, they do. And because I'm alone,
Right.
my it's either I use the alarm that's around my neck,
Yeah.
or I use the telephone and call one of my children.
So
Or
this,
I've got two neighbors, a neighbor that's on my right side and a neighbor that's across the hall that I can call for assistance, and they will help me immediately.
again, the aging process, there are so many things that we have to think about that we never
Mhm,
thought about. Here you are wearing something around your neck. You've got, um, you have neighbors that could be alerted if you needed help. You could pick up the phone and call your family members. You have to set up a system.
right.
You need a system. You cannot wait until something happens and then in hindsight say, I should have did this, I should have done that. If I was driving in my automobile and I felt that I was in need of medical assistance, I'm trying to train myself
Mhm,
because I have to say to myself, you need to pull your car over to the side and call 911 because the temptation for a person who's driving is to drive yourself to the nearest hospital, which is not wise, correct?
right. right.
And
You should call 911 from wherever you're located and let somebody else take you to the hospital.
correct,
Yes.
correct. And but again, if we are not making plans for
Hmm.
any of these things that can happen to us, then we set ourselves up to be either seriously
Hmm.
injured or I mean, the fact that you said that you've used that necklace around your neck a couple times, that has helped you. That has helped you to recover to the
Yes.
point where you're at now.
Yes. And sometimes I have pushed the button and they have said, do you have any questions? Can we help you with anything? And so I am able to have a communication with the helpers on that little gadget.
So pushing the button for you, you can mistakenly do that, is what you're saying.
Yes, I can. I have
Just
done it
yeah,
mistakenly as well. Yes. And
right,
they understand that. They do
right,
understand that.
right. So they're
Yeah.
not making any derogatory statements. Say, old lady, why you keep pressing the button?
No, they've just said, is there something we can do to assist you,
Right,
madam? You know,
right.
they're very pleasant.
The other thing, the last thing about this I want to say is I I was walking into BJ's the other day and I saw a lady going into BJ's and she had her dog with her.
Yeah.
And what are those dogs called? Is it comfort dogs, the ones that can go into the stores or go anywhere with you?
I didn't know that people were able to take their dogs in. I there may be some circumstance that's required by the store for someone to
Right.
bring a dog, and
Well,
it
it's a
may be,
comfort.
yeah,
Yeah.
they may have some kind of condition that requires them to have the dog with them at all times.
Right. And I'm wondering, the term comfort dog, or you have anxiety and the dog helps to quiet it down.
Right,
So,
right.
so have you ever thought of having like a cat in your home to have something else that's alive and moving around? Or you're at a point in your life, no more dogs, no more cats, no birds, no nothing.
Yeah, I all my children's life, as they were growing. Uh, I'm going to get rid of this. I'm going to get rid of this call. Um, I had dogs, cats, birds, and fish. So I've had all that as my children were growing.
Yeah,
And even though it was their responsibility to feed the animal, oftentimes they were at school or they went out and they forgot to do it. And I
right.
ended up doing it.
Yeah,
When I moved into this unit, I was on crutches and I was not in any condition to bring my dog and walk my dog, take my
yeah,
dog outside or anything. And
yeah,
so my friends took my dog and they kept him for several more years. And then when he was dying, they called me
oh,
and I drove over to the veterinary hospital
right.
and I was able to hold the dog until he passed.
Yeah, that to me is one of the most painful emotional experiences that you can go
Mm,
through, because when we had our first dog, we bought our first dog, we had to put the dog to sleep um
uh,
earlier because the dog had bit a couple people.
right.
And when I went to the veterinarians, I actually went to Burger King. I drove to Burger King and I got two hamburgers, one for the dog, one for me. And we drove and parked the car, and I was feeding the dog the last supper, the last meal. And it was very emotional. It got so emotional. The vet will let you stay there, as you say, and hold the dog. The vet told me you can stay in the room as long as you need. And a friend of mine who knew I was there came running to the hospital to be
Mm,
there with me. It's more devastating than one could think. And people
yes,
who are
it was
not,
very, it was very sad. I mean, both of my friends, a husband and wife who had
yeah,
taken care of the dog for me in my, when I couldn't have the dog here in the condo,
yeah,
um, they called me and they were standing on the, they were in the same place that I was with the dog, but I was holding him.
right,
And it was just very sad that I knew he was dying, but he lived to be 19, and that was a very long time for that particular breed of dog.
right. So we've had to put down one and two. So we are
Hmm.
actually on our third and fourth dog. So we have, as you
Wow.
know, we have two
Yeah.
dogs and
Uh-huh.
we now have a cat in the house.
Right.
And one of the major challenges, you talk about mental health, you talk about trying to figure this out. How do you introduce a cat, a new cat, to two dogs who say, "This house is my territory. What are you doing
Yeah.
here?" And
Yeah.
so we've tried a couple times to give the cat and the dogs a chance to become friends, but all the dogs do is that they bark at the cat, and we don't think it's the right time. And I've actually gone on YouTube and watched people teach us how to do it, and everybody does it differently.
I know there's an adjustment to be made with animals in your home that's like an adoption of a child.
Yes, yeah. Well,
I mean,
yeah,
people
but
have to do something special.
right, right. And when you adopt a child, if the child is of talking age,
Hmm.
it's a little bit easier to negotiate this. But taking two dogs that whenever that someone rings the doorbell or makes a sound in the house will bark,
Yeah.
they can hear the cat running over on the second floor. They can hear the cat running back and forth and back and forth. So one of
Right.
these one of these days we'll bring the two dogs and the cat to your house, and then you can help us figure out how to do this.
Well, I don't think I can make the adjustment where I live because I don't live in as large a space as you live.
Yeah, well, I
I've been in
understand
your
that.
house.
Well, let's go back to you taking walks with your walker. So in order for you to do that, you have to feel very confident that if you became tired, and that's the thing I like about the walker, you could just stop, turn around, and sit down,
Well,
right?
I don't walk any great distances anyway. I walk a distance between where I've been dropped off in an automobile and where the door is to the building I'm going into.
Okay.
And that's not much of uh, an amount. And it's like, if you think about uh, the distance between the driveway at the
Yeah.
church
Yeah.
and the ramp to get to the into the door,
Yeah.
that's about the kind of walk length that I do on a regular basis.
Right. Well, you may not know this, but years ago, when I was a youth pastor, I would take my teenagers, 30 of them, 40 of them, 50 of them, up to New Hampshire. And we would climb a place called Mount Major. They
Right.
say they say that it would take you 30 minutes to get up to the top of the mountain.
Mhm.
It took us 4 hours with inner city kids. 4 hours, Louise. And about 2 years ago, I posted on Facebook a picture of Mount Major, and my caption said, "I want to make one more climb. I want to climb Mount Major just one more time with a few people with me." And I decided against it because I get winded if you're going up a mountain. And then I thought in terms of saying, suppose I got halfway up and I decided I couldn't go any
Mhm.
longer. I don't want to sleep out in the forest, right? I don't want to
Right,
do that.
right,
Because they have Mount Major's in New Hampshire, and they have elephants and rhinoceroses and
right,
alligators
right.
up in New Hampshire. No, I'm only joking, but it's up in New Hampshire. And then I thought in terms of if they had to rescue me, how much money would I have to spend to pay New Hampshire back for climbing a mountain when I knew that it probably wasn't the best idea? Are there any things that, as you reach the age that you are reaching, are there any things that you would like to do that you know that you can't do anymore?
Hmm. Um, I think there are certain places I'd like to go
Okay,
that there might be more space between where I would be dropped off and where I would have to go to get into the building or get into the space that I was going for. If I was going to a zoo, for example, I used to bring my children to the zoo. I used to bring my children to something right down, what's the name of that place in Roxbury where the
Thanks.
animals are?
Franklin Park.
Franklin
No?
Park, right.
Okay,
I went to Franklin Park many, many times with my children.
yeah,
I just parked my car and walked with my children the whole distance. And if we could touch any of the animals, we were able to do that just easily, and then move on. And we always enjoyed it. And right now, my children are adults and they don't even remember going there,
yeah.
which I find very interesting because I still remember going there.
How old were they when you brought them there?
Oh, maybe 6 and 5.
Okay,
Yeah, 5 and 6. Yeah. But they seem not to remember where we went. There was also another place that had animals that was it was another driving distance that I went to. But and it was here in Massachusetts. So there were places that I brought my children to advance them on the things they were learning in school.
yep.
And so that was good. But now I have no reason to bring anybody anywhere. And I have no reason to bring myself to some of these places either, except that I want to visit my grandchildren,
Yeah,
my great-grandchildren, my
yeah,
great-great-grandchildren. And that to me is what is important.
right,
I would like
right.
somebody to drive me to where they live so that I can visit with them, play with them, enjoy their the time that they climb on me and they enjoy me as well.
That's something we do not have any grandchildren, so I haven't experienced that
Oh,
yet.
I'm not kidding. I have grandchildren who are all grown up. They're adults. I have great-grandchildren, great-great-grandchildren, and 2 great-great-grandchildren in
Wow,
Oregon.
wow, wow.
In Oregon. So that would be something that I would want to do. I would want to get on a plane, fly to Oregon, and visit those 2 great-great-grandchildren.
And if you did something like that, you definitely would have to have somebody accompany you
My
at
daughter
the
would meet,
airport.
yeah, my daughter would meet me and make sure that I had my walker with me and that I
Yeah.
would be available for any assistance that she could offer, and she would offer it.
It's just all the things that we now have to do in preparation to leave our houses.
Mm-hmm.
You know, right? You have to have the right clothes on.
Right,
Or
right.
you have to know your time from the time that you need to arrive at your destination and get back home so you can use the bathroom. I have people who come into the studio and they always go to the bathroom before they broadcast, and they always go to the bathroom after the broadcast. And it's
Yes,
just
yeah.
habits that we all are changing our habits to accommodate ourselves at this stage in our lives. It's sometimes it could be overwhelming trying to think through all the things that we
Mhm.
need to do. I have a pastor friend who told me that he had to shorten his service to accommodate all the seniors that come, because if he doesn't shorten the service, they're all getting up in the middle of the service to all go to the bathroom.
Right. Well, it's just interesting. And what I was thinking when you were talking about, I was thinking about all the years when my children were young and I was taking them to these places. And now I'm going to where my children's children are to
Yeah,
see them, to visit them.
yeah,
And that's a different thing. And the other thing that's different for me is I worked for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts for
yeah,
50 years,
yeah,
50 years.
yeah,
And I drove across the Commonwealth. I drove almost to New Hampshire, almost to Rhode Island, out to to get the ferry as well. And I trained people when I went out to be sure that they were aware of what the contract that we awarded them provided them. And I used to do all that all by myself. And
yeah,
now I couldn't possibly consider doing something like that.
right.
But
Again,
that is what happens to the people who are listening to us, who are in the same process that you and I are in.
right. So we have three people I'm seeing on the Facebook: Vivian Searcy, Joseph Briggs, and Sybil Woodstock are watching us on Facebook.
Uh-huh.
And and none of these people that I know of, I know two of them, are our age. They're much younger than you. They're a whole lot
Yeah.
younger than you, and
Well,
they're younger than I am.
mhm. Well, everybody's younger than I am because you and I know that I am the oldest member of Global Ministries Christian Church.
Did you ever think about that when you first came to the church, that you would have the distinction of being the oldest member, that you would have that?
No, when I became friends with you 30 years ago,
Yeah,
30 years ago, because I was the president of Codman Square Neighborhood Council,
sure.
you came to some of the meetings. That's where we met, at the meetings.
Okay.
And then I know I came to your church a few times because I was interested in changing from being a Catholic to being um, a Baptist anyway.
Yeah.
And so I remember I used to walk in the neighborhood with you as well. And I mean, I had no idea that it would be 30 years that I would become friends with you, that you would be my pastor all those 30 years, in addition to my friend, and that I would guarantee myself that even though I live in Hull, which is 16 miles away from the church, that I have a ride that takes me to our church on a regular basis, because I'm not giving up coming to our church.
Yeah, yeah. And I see others who feel the same way that you feel. And some Sunday mornings when I arrive at the church, there's very few people there, because the it's sometimes it's the seniors that are at the church earlier than all those young folk.
Mhm.
And by the time we raise the offering in the church, I turn around And we do have people coming out, and we have some people coming back to the church who have not been back in 2 years.
Right.
So, right, and we have some new people who are coming and experiencing our church experience, and they
Mhm.
like what they are experiencing. So God has been very good for us, and I'm thankful that we're seeing some things take place in the church, courtesy of the city of Boston, to help us
Right.
with extensive renovations of the exterior of the church building. That if the city was not helping us, I don't know what we would have done to do the work that we have done without a real strain. God has really blessed us, and we're looking forward to one more grant to do the front entrance of the church, the doors and the windows and the pine. So I'm hoping and believing that
Yeah.
God is
Mhm.
going to make this last
Yes.
grant
Yeah.
happen.
Yes. I know that is a beautiful place, but I'm not going there so much for the work that's going to be done, because I know it's going to be done, but it's because that is where I learned how to read the Bible. I learned how to pray. And that to me has been much more important.
Than anything else that you've experienced.
Yes.
You've learned the basics of being a Christian and living the life out, right?
And I mean, even though I was the church clerk and treasurer for almost 20 years,
Yeah,
uh, and I came to the church probably 4 times a week to do that little bit of work. It wasn't 4 times a week, 8 hours a day. It was 4 times a week, a couple of hours each time I was there.
yeah,
But it was very important to me to do something for my church. And then you asked me to pass it off to other people who were younger than I, who were driving and more capable of attending to do that work. And I
yeah,
have done that. People are still sending money into the church and then sending me a notice that they've donated money.
right,
And so I'm still notifying the new treasurer
right,
about the money that's been donated.
right. Well, that probably eh, will take a long time when you've been doing
Yes,
something for as long as you've done it.
yes.
Sometimes you can't even communicate with everybody or all the vendors
Mhm.
who do not even know that you're no longer the church treasurer. So
I
that
know.
happens.
Yeah, yeah.
Go ahead, go ahead.
But that's fine. That's fine with me. I have no problem. And when, as I said, I have been getting the ride, and
Yeah,
that's the official name of the transportation. But I've been getting the ride on Sundays to take me to church and then to take me home. Sometimes it's later in the day than than the service has ended, but I always have an opportunity to talk with you, to talk with other church members while I'm waiting for my ride, and it works fine. I just love Sundays. It's a wonderful day.
well, why don't you, we have 4 minutes to go. So, boy, can you talk for 57 minutes? It's amazing. We have 4 minutes to go. What, how would you summarize what we've talked about today regarding getting older and adjusting to it?
Well, we talked about your interest in the whole process of becoming older as you become older, and what it means to your mind, your body, your hearing. You didn't mention your vision, but it was more your hearing for
Yeah,
you. For me, it was my driving, and
right,
it was, and interesting opportunity for us to share the things that have been going on with us, which are not so critically unusual to people who are in the aging process.
Yeah.
So what
Yeah.
we've talked about is not so critically unusual. And the people who have listened to us might have their mothers and fathers listening to what we're talking about, because it's something that's related to their process as well. So that has been very important to both of us, actually, to share.
And I think that for those who listen to us, they may better understand why their parents or grandparents are thinking the way they're thinking and processing the way they're processing,
Right,
because there are different stages of transition from middle age to where we're at the senior age.
right,
And it's one thing to go middle age, that's a number. But when you go into the senior process, it's like, although you're getting older, you're more childlike in certain ways in your life. And we shouldn't be ashamed or embarrassed that we're forgetting things. We need help here. We need assistance here. That's a part of the process. And if we have a church or a home where the people there understand the process, it's easier for all of us to get along with each other and
right,
not feel that people are trying to close our lives down and take things away from us. Our family members are closing in on us because they want to keep us around a little longer.
right,
Sometimes it makes us feel like they're cramping our style,
right,
but they know what the impact would be if we became seriously injured or sick, and it
right,
would put a whole drain
right,
on the whole family unit. So
right.
I'm glad we're able to do this.
So we've been talking about more than mental health in your neighborhood.
Yeah,
Much more.
we have. But again, what we talked about affects the mental health of senior citizens, because if seniors feel that people are doing things to them or against them, or feel oppressed by their loved ones or by society, it makes
Right.
the aging process that much more difficult. So
Mhm.
any final words before we turn the music on?
No, I'm just wanting to thank you for joining me, and thank those people who are listening for joining us as well, because this is critically important to all of us. It happens to all of us. It happens to you and me. It happens to those people out there watching and listening as well. I'll see you all next week.
Okay, Louise, bye-bye. I'm gonna stop the recording.